On this week's episode of the WNP Podcast, Tennessee's number one? Stay tuned. Episode 158 of the We're Not Professionals podcast. I'm your host, Mike Mitchelson, and joining me today, as always, my co-host, Chase Crawshaw. Chase, how are you?
I am doing swell. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm surprised that we didn't butcher that. I mean, it's been over a month since we've done a WNP podcast.
It has.
But we're back, and for those of you that don't follow us on Twitter, one, make sure to do so, because we'll give you updates over there on what's happening. But two, the audio platform that we've been using just broke on my move. And it takes editing from a 3-hour job to a half-hour job. And that's why we haven't really been able to get anything out. We're not professionals-wise, because Bolts broadcast, it's still been going, but that one we're contracted to do. And with how much editing was involved, I just didn't really have time to do all of that for the We're Not Professionals podcast. But now that it's back, I'm so happy to say we're back. And, man, we got some good stuff to talk about. Today, we're going to be talking about college football. I'm not sure if this is going to be a long college football and NFL episode or if we're going to break them into two, but we're starting with college football on this one. And, Chase, first of all, it feels so good to be back. But two, both football landscapes, college and the NFL, has changed dramatically over the last month since we've been gone.
Yeah, they really have. I mean, the NFL, you see a couple teams like the Giants just going crazy out of nowhere. The Seahawks playing really well. In college, Tennessee, big upset win over Alabama. Certainly, currently, as you mentioned in the opening, sitting at number one. It's been crazy. It really has. It's been super fun. It's been super exciting as a football fan. There's some less than exciting things, like a couple of these Thursday, Monday night matchups that we've had to endure this year for the NFL. But overall, I'd say, especially with how good college has been from what I've been watching, I'd say it's been a pretty good year of football.
Yeah, especially this past Monday night's game. I mean, Halloween, it was quite the horror here in my house. So, Chase, let's hop into it. College football first. We're going to be talking about the new college football playoff rankings that just came out last night. Going to be talking about the Tennessee upset over Alabama and what to expect from these two teams, and specifically the upcoming matchup for Tennessee, because that one is going to be an absolute barn burner. Then we're going to be talking about some Heisman candidates right now, who are our votes going to at this moment in time. And then while talking about the college football playoff rankings, we're going to be going into the likes of the Michigans, the Clemsons, the TCUs, etc. So it's going to be a good episode. Let's start with those college football rankings. As we see Tennessee number one, I mean, that was an initial shock for me because we saw the AP poll come out and they said they have Tennessee tied for second with Ohio State. I don't remember the last time that happened. I don't know if that's ever happened, but I was shocked when I saw a tied for two, and then College Football Playoff Committee comes out. They're like, nah, they're number one.
Yeah, it is crazy, honestly. I think Tennessee has been fantastic this year. They've looked really strong. They looked great against Bama, put up a great offensive effort, but are they really the number one team, the number one roster in college football? I think we all kind of know that answer. I know Hendon Hooker's been playing awesome, and it's super exciting to see him do what he does, and maybe he can turn that into an NFL career. But honestly, I might see 6 teams below them that I would actually prefer. Like if I'm having them go against Bama again, I'm taking Bama. Like I'm not taking Tennessee like twice. Like I legitimately might take every other undefeated FBS team and then Bama over Tennessee right now.
I think this week's going to be a true test as they're going up against number 3 Georgia. And my dad, who's a big Georgia fan, I don't know if the people listening know that, but it's been talked about before on this podcast, is actually going to the game.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So after Tennessee beat Bama, they're like, all right, we're doing it. So he's going. He's excited. I know. I talked to him this past weekend, and He is absolutely amped. They've already got tailgates lined up with some of the Bulldog fans down there, so it's going to be a lot of fun. But this Tennessee Volunteers team, I'm glad that we're on the same page here because I think Tennessee this year is just the Oklahoma Sooners of past years. I mean, they've got a great offense. They've got a front runner for the Heisman in Hendon Hooker. But when you look at their defense, it's ranked 40th right now. And now that's not as bad as some of the Oklahoma defenses we've seen in past, but when you look at Ohio State, top 10, Georgia, top 10, Bama, top 5, Michigan, top 5, these are all teams that they're going to have to compete with in these college football playoffs, and it's not even close when you look at their defense. They've got a good offense. They've got a great offense. Is it as good as an Ohio State offense while also having to face Ohio State's top 10 defense? I don't think so. So Tennessee, I think that it's time to enjoy number one while you're there, but I don't think it's going to be for long.
I don't think it's going to last this week, man.
I hope not. I'm happy that Tennessee is going on this Cinderella story. I'm so happy they beat Alabama, but I've got a bit of a Georgia fandom in me because, it's my duty as a good son.
So it's cool to see a change of pace, to see a different team up top. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't see how they can really hold on to this. I really don't.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of hard because we always root for new teams to make the college football playoffs, and we see it now with Tennessee, and it feels like the general consensus is they shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be number one. I've heard people say, similarly to you, that if they played Alabama again, Alabama would take that one. And it just kind of stinks because we always root for it. And now that we have someone new, it's like, probably not.
I know.
Same was with Cincinnati last year. I mean, that was a team I think everyone knew didn't really belong with the big hitters. But two teams that do belong once they get there, USC and Texas, because they're back, baby.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, not this year, but
Oh, they're gonna be back. The 5-3 Texas Longhorns are almost back.
Yes, and USC is back.
USC is back as
one loss.
Yeah,
it is
as back as you expect someone to be going through the midst of a change.
All right. Well, we talked about the number one team. Let's talk about number 2 and number 5 together. They're both from the Big Ten East. You got Ohio State at number 2. And Michigan at number 5. What are your thoughts?
I mean, you can't really say it's wrong. Last year, Michigan beat Ohio State in the regular season, but Ohio State was the better team year long and obviously put up the better fight when it came to the college football playoffs. And this year, they've kind of steamrolled everybody. There's been a couple closer games, but really, there's really been no doubt going into the game that Ohio State was going to win. And Michigan, I think it's been that way for the most part as well too. Everyone thinks there's always a chance that they can drop at the Michigan State because there always is a chance. It's those type of rivalry games, like you can throw the records out the window. It really doesn't matter. But Michigan did hold on, and their defense played well while their offense didn't do as good as they should have. So that was a good sign of things to come. So it's going to be really interesting to see when these two teams eventually play. I would expect they're both going to be 11-0. It very well is possible that one of these teams can drop something on the way. It's not like it's a cakewalk of a schedule, but both these teams are facing relatively easy paths towards each other. So it's really going to be a great test, great question on which of these two are going to come out. I really want to root for Michigan. I really do. But, can I do that right now? I don't know. It really, for me, I think it comes down to who's going to outscore the other. Obviously, that's how it works in football. You got to score more points to win. But I don't think it's going to be like a defensive effort. I think the defenses are going to underwhelm each other, and the offense are going to kind of explode. I think we can see a kind of higher scoring game, which would be exciting. But again, that's still not for another 3-4 weeks down the road. But I would have to say right now, Ohio State's probably the better team and probably fairly ranked above them.
I agree. And sticking with Michigan here, I don't remember, was it you or Johnny that were saying this is a team that they're just too close in games when it comes to the first, second, and third quarter, but they just ramp it up in the fourth quarter. They're able to make games look like they're bigger blowouts than they actually are.
That sounds like a Johnny thing. He probably said that during the Michigan State game.
Yeah. So, and that's exactly what happened. They were up, what was it, 13-7 with like 6 minutes left in the third quarter, and then they make it 29-7. It looks like an absolute blowout. But if you were watching the game, you know, through the first 35, 40 minutes, it was not a blowout whatsoever. And then they were just able to stroll on by as the less talented, the less conditioned team was tired and no longer had the hope.
Yeah, it is fair, but that's why I think it's going to kind of be more of an offensive effort, because I think in the Michigan offense, they did everything they could to get themselves in a position to score in the state game, but they just really didn't score. They didn't capitalize. There was red zone turnovers, and they kind of just didn't really convert how they should. So I think it's going to be cleaned up. We've kind of seen all year long that the team's been very strong offensively, so that's why I really think it's going to be, even though it's two good defenses, I think it's really going to be a big offensive effort between the two.
Yeah, and I think there's big questions with both teams, but before I hit on that, I do want to ask you, Chase, as a guy who is in dynasty football leagues, as a guy who loves to evaluate the upcoming draft classes, do you find it, I don't want to say easier to root for, but do you find it harder to hate against the likes of Ohio State because of how much talented prospects they have coming out this year and the following year?
Yes and no. Like it's no different than, what's a good example? I'll go Justin Jefferson. It's no different than Justin Jefferson on the Vikings. I'm a huge Justin Jefferson fan. I was coming out of college. Do I like the Vikings? No, I do not like the Vikings, but I really like the player. In Ohio State, I really like C.J. Stroud. I want him to be the Lions quarterback, I think. I've still got to make my final conclusion, but right now I'm still leaning him. I like Trayvon Henderson. I think he's going to be a top 5 running back in the league. I like JSN. I think he's got legitimate top 10 wide receiver potential in the league. I think that defense is full of studs and full of playmakers, just like every single year. It's no different. So there's just so much talent that I like, and especially on this offensive side of the ball, with being, you know, the big dynasty guy that I am. So I can like the players, but the team, I'm not going to root for the Ohio State Buckeyes to ever win. Screw that.
Right. I feel you there. Let's not talk about some glaring issues with both teams. I think Michigan, the number one issue for me at this point is the passing game, but more specifically, it seems like J.J. McCarthy, you know, he's still young. He definitely needs another year. But this is a player that seems to lack some accuracy as you start getting to the mid to deeper ranges. And I've seen a couple of throws from him that I just kind of questioned. And also decision-making, obviously that's going to come with time as well. But I think right now Michigan's biggest, weakness, if it were to be diagnosed by Ohio State, would probably be the quarterback play when it comes to the actual passing. I mean, the guy's great on his legs. He can get out of sticky situations, but I have noticed that he does struggle with a little bit of accuracy and playmaking at this point.
So he's made some very fantastic throws in his career so far. He's made some really nice, 50, 60-yard touchdown bombs, but it definitely is inconsistent. There's throws that are, when you hit that mid to deep range, that, he's throwing guys 3-4 steps ahead, which no one's running into that. That's too far ahead. If you're throwing half a step to a step, maybe a guy can speed up and run into that. But that far, they're not going to. And that's something that, it's going to come with time. It's going to come with adjustment. You're not a pass-first offense. You're very much a run-first offense. So you're not getting as many pass reps in the game to figure out how that game seed's going to work perfectly. So it's an adjustment, and I think J.J. McCarthy is going to be fine. I think he's got, legitimate NFL potential. Is he going to be some sort of NFL starting stud? I don't know, but I think he's someone that's going to be on the team's radars for sure going into the future, and I think he can play well enough to support really Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, and mostly Blake Corum in their hopefully dominant run performances. I think that if he can come in, not turn over the ball, and throw for 170 to 220 yards, I think Michigan's going to safely win the game, because I can't imagine they don't rush for 200 combined.
And then Ohio State, I want to talk about three things specifically that are hurting them. Number one, health. I mean, we haven't seen Jackson Smith-Njigba like all year. He's got, maybe 15 catches on the season?
I think he has 5.
Even worse. So he has not been able to get on the field. And at this point, if I'm Ohio State, we have the path to Michigan. We have the path to the Big Ten championship. At this point, I am holding Jackson Smith-Njigba out for the rest of the year until we get to that Michigan game.
I mean, I agree with what's even the point of risking anything. If he's this banged up and he's like close to coming in, you're not going to lose these next games. Marvin Harrison Jr. has been playing great, so you've got your number one receiver right now. Let Jason come in and let them be a dominant 1-2 combo. You'll be just fine.
It's absolutely wild because like Buka's playing very well,
Yeah,
and then Julian Fleming will have just this one-off game where he'll put up 2 touchdowns and 100 yards. Now that's not very consistent for him. I wish it was, but
that's your boy there.
Yeah, I mean, ever since I saw he was wide receiver 1 coming out, I think it was the same year as Bijan, I was like, man, I love this guy. I want to see him have such success, and he hasn't really had that up to this point, but this season he has looked a lot better than the prior season. So,
for sure.
Health, that was the main one. Number 2, the offensive line. The offensive line hasn't been as dominant as we've seen in years prior for Ohio State. This is one that I think they just need to be better. They need to protect Stroud a little bit. They need to open the running lanes for Travion Henderson a little bit more. It's not one that is going to be, absolutely detrimental. It's not the Bengals from last year, but when you're going up against the number 3 defense in the league, that being Michigan, one that has another dominant defensive line as they do year in and year out, that offensive line might be in some trouble. So I think that unit definitely needs to step up as they continue to progress towards Michigan.
Yeah, 100%. And we all know that players love stepping up in these big games, and when you're at these types of schools, you're not going to be able to play there unless you're a big game player. So I would have to expect that they're going to step up, play better against Michigan. Not necessarily just the O-line, but the running back room, the whole offense group, the defense group. Everyone's going to step up to play better against Michigan or Ohio State, whichever side you're on. So I think it shouldn't be a major issue going into the game. Honestly, I think it'll be a little bit better contested, which is, again, leading to why I think it's going to be such a highly offensive game.
And then finally, this isn't a huge gripe for me because I haven't visually noticed it. I haven't watched much Ohio State recently, but a lot of the dynasty community is actually becoming a tad, not a ton, but a tad bit sour on Travion Henderson. They're saying that this guy, he struggles to keep his legs churning as he gets hit. He doesn't take contact very well. Now, again, I haven't watched much Ohio State. I can't confirm or deny this, but if that's the case, that's going to be a struggle for Ohio State as well. I mean, we know who's the other back they have over there? Williams?
Mayan Williams.
Yes, and he's been playing fantastic as well. So I guess, if Henderson is having this issue, it's not a backbreaker because they have Mayan Williams, but I have heard whispers that Travion Henderson might not be the guy everyone thought he was.
And yeah, it's definitely possible because something does look like it's missing, but he's still extremely talented, and you can see the talent there. He's just got to kind of get it figured out. They talk about a sophomore slump in the NFL. It happens in college sometimes too. I don't think there's really much cause for concern at the moment. People are saying this about Bijan a bit last year, like, oh, maybe there's a bit of sophomore slump because he wasn't producing as highly, but now everyone's back to thinking he's just, the RB1 in Dynasty already, thinking he's, a guaranteed first-round pick, which I think so as well. So I don't think there's too much worry for Travion. I really don't. And I think this is the type of game where he could really be like, you know what, I'm back, and then go off.
Right. All right, let's now talk about Clemson before we get to the other 2 SEC teams. Clemson sitting at number 4. This is a team that a lot of people still have a lot of questions about. What are your thoughts on Clemson?
I would put every team ranked below them 5, 6, and 7 above them very safely. I wouldn't put, the other teams that have losses above them other than Bama, but they're not better than Michigan. They're not better than Bama. I don't think they're better than TCU. I really don't. I think they're, and maybe they're better than Tennessee. I don't know. That one I really don't know because I still think Tennessee could just be riding off a hot streak and it could come crashing at any point. But beside the point, I don't know. Clemson doesn't have a very hard schedule in the ACC. They don't really play much outside of their conference as well. So it's a bit of an easier ride. DJU has had better moments, but he's still not looking like, the bona fide 5-star future top overall potential pick that he was supposed to be. So the offense has still slightly underwhelmed a bit. I think when it comes time to play in a bigger game, if they go against any of these top 7 teams, I think that they're going to be the underdog. And, maybe they would get the advantage over Tennessee, but I think that would be a kind of close game. So I'm really not super in on Clemson. It's a team I like supporting, but I don't have much faith.
I agree. I'm not super high on Clemson, and I'm interested to see what they do as they continue forward. You mentioned that DJU, he has had a better season than last. Not very hard to do. Last year was absolutely brutal for him. But in their most recent game, that being against Syracuse, Cade Klubnik actually had to come in at some point because I think DJU had
that's right.
maybe 3 interceptions or something. I believe DJU might still be the starter. I can't confirm that, but regardless, if they were willing to swap in Cade, then I'm interested to see what they have going at that quarterback position, because if you don't have that figured out, there's no chance you're competing with these top teams.
Yeah, so 100%. And Klubnik's gone in a couple times, and I want to say it's 2 or 3 at least. And every time it's gone back to DJU. So I would assume they're still going to ride with him, but if things, start struggling for some reason, then I don't think they'll hesitate very much to kind of go back to Cade, because he's shown some really good moments. He's shown some, less than ideal moments, but he's a kid. What do you expect? He's still only 18 years old. It would be cool to see him get some more game action, maybe take the reins going forward, especially if DJ struggles a little bit more. But right now, I'll still expect DJ to be the guy.
Absolutely. Let's not talk about the 2 remaining SEC teams, that being Georgia and Alabama. There can be argument for both of these teams to be the number 1. I know Alabama does have that loss against Tennessee, but I think when you look talent-wise, they're still definitely in that range. What do you think about these 2 teams? Where do you expect them to end up in a couple weeks here?
Georgia's going undefeated, and it depends how the rest of the SEC plays out, who they play there, what happens. If they end up playing Bama, is that possible? I can't remember. They in the same division in the SEC. I can never remember.
Yeah, so they would play in the national championship if they both go.
The SEC championship, you're saying?
Yes, sorry. The SEC championship if they both go undefeated.
That's right. And that's what I thought. And I do think it's going to happen. I think Georgia would end up coming out on top on that one. I really do. I think that right now they're the better team. Stetson Bennett is still somehow getting it done, even though he's 107 years old. I don't get it, but there's a talented football team, man. They're coached well. They play strong as a group. The defense is always great. I gotta say that they're my favorite in the SEC. I would probably have, honestly, based on the top rankings here, Ohio State would be my number 1 probably, and Georgia would safely be my number 2. I could easily flip one of those, argue either way, but nonetheless, Georgia should be, one of the top 2 teams, and I think they're going to prove it when the time comes.
Yeah, both of these teams are absolutely fantastic. I do have questions with Stetson Bennett. I know that was said a lot last year, but he came out hot this year, and then he had like a 2 or 3 game stretch where he really struggled. I think right now he's really being bailed out by what should be the Heisman favorite, Brock Bowers, an absolute stud. Maybe not Heisman, but the guy has been an absolute stud, and I can't wait for him to come into the NFL. Maybe join my dynasty team. Who knows? We'll see.
Probably not.
But both these teams really talented. The one thing that kind of stinks for Georgia and Tennessee, whoever wins that game, they're going to the SEC championship. They're both in the SEC East. You drop it, the other team's going. So this is an extremely important matchup this weekend. It's going to be an awesome game to see these super high-powered offensive Tennessee go up against the super dominant defense that Georgia somehow returned, even though they lost all of their defensive starters. They continue to be dominant on that defensive side of the ball. So it's going to be a great matchup, and I'm super excited to see how the SEC pans out. Chase, I do want to talk about the 3 teams remaining outside looking in, that being TCU at 8-0, Oregon 7-1, USC 7-1. You're a big TCU guy. Tell me why.
Let's go Horned Frogs, baby. They're awesome. They're cool to root for. It would be cool to see them, find their way to sneak into the college football playoffs. And they're not some group of 5 school that's just coming out of nowhere. You never heard of them, like Cincinnati. They're a solid, respectable program. They've had some history some history of success, I should say, in the past, and they're playing just good football right now. They've beaten 4 or 5 ranked teams, whatever the number is. I can't remember. They deserve more credit than they're getting, and I really think they're kind of being slighted. I just watching them play. It's like, all right, maybe something here. This isn't a team that's riddled with just pure NFL talent, but when it comes to college football, they get it done really well. So I'm definitely rooting for TCU. I want them to get into the college football playoffs. My top 4 to get in, of course, is going to be Michigan, and then TCU, Georgia, and I couldn't care less who the 4th team is, to be honest. So I really am going to be rooting for them to get in just because it makes for a fun story, and they do look like just like a solid college football team.
All right, Chase, let me ask you this. If TCU had Sooners as their name or Longhorns as their brand, where would they be ranked right now?
How would they not be ranked as a top 4 team, honestly? How would they not be above at least Clemson?
I agree 100%. Clemson, I mean, they're there, but when you look at TCU and their signature wins, I mean, they got to win over Kansas State, who currently ranks 13th. They got to win over Oklahoma State, who currently ranks 18. This is a team that if they were labeled as the Oklahoma Sooners or the Texas Longhorns, the resume by itself gets them there. So
for sure,
I agree 100%. They're getting slighted hard in this one, sitting at 8-0 and looking outside or being outside looking in. Then we go over to the Pac-12, look at both Oregon and USC. These are 2 teams that are very, very talented. Oregon's been in the scene for, gosh, it feels like a decade now, where USC has been quiet over the past couple of years, but with the new coach, the new quarterback, they are back in business. Do we see any Pac-12 teams like sniff the top 4? Is it possible?
I mean, the only way it's possible is if all those teams that are undefeated lose, and still, I think they're going to get the benefit of the doubt. I just don't see it happening this year. I really don't.
And it's unfortunate because I think Caleb Williams is a guy that 2 weeks ago we're talking about him when it comes to the Heisman watch. I mean, the guy was playing absolutely fantastic. However, a couple slower weeks in a row hurts his case. A loss in there for USC hurts their case. So I'd like to see them have that rebound and come back. You know, maybe Ohio State or Michigan, whoever it is, they take a loss. Georgia, Tennessee, we know one of them is going to drop this week, and then maybe Alabama drops in the SEC championship. Maybe there's a possibility for one Big Ten team, one SEC team, TCU and USC. But at that point, they're not getting rid of Clemson for the likes of USC.
Yeah, 0% chance.
All right, well, let's now talk about those Heisman votes. Chase, this is a hotly contested debate when it comes to the Heisman watch. A lot of good players out there, a lot of good quarterbacks too. Not even mentioning the guys that will be coming out of the draft this year, but a lot of younger guys such as Caleb Williams, Drake May, Quinn Ewers. I think if he was healthier longer, he could be in this conversation as well. But who is currently leading your Heisman watch?
So I gotta probably give my vote right now to Hendon Hooker. He's leading Tennessee to 8-0, something that was completely unexpected, and it's for good reason. He's playing well. He's playing good football. He's looking like he's a potential NFL quarterback, and when you're doing that for a team that was not necessarily off the radar, but wasn't quite expected to be this good, like I think they were like the 25th ranked team starting the year or something like that. That's a pretty good sign. So he's got to be my favorite, but I mean, you got to say shout out to Blake Corum, because right now Blake Corum is carrying this Michigan team, this Michigan offense. He's been dominating week in and week out, and I don't think he's going to end up as a finalist, but as of right now, he deserves to end up as a finalist because he has played some phenomenal football and is looking like a legitimate NFL running back.
For sure, and Blake Corum wasn't a guy on my radar when the year started, because if you don't know, in Dynasty football, I currently have 12 first-round picks, the whole entire first round. Blake Corum wasn't really a guy I had my eyes on. Obviously, I knew about him being from Michigan, but, you know, he looked good last year, but is he going to take it to the next level? I didn't know. This year, he has looked absolutely fantastic, absolutely back on my radar. But for my Heisman favorite, I'm going to go different. I'm going to go C.J. Stroud. This guy's been playing fantastic without his number one wide receiver. Him and Marvin Harrison Jr. have been unreal. Marvin Harrison Jr., dude, I mean, we were talking about him for a while, and I sent you the picture this summer showing, like, dude's got ripped. Guy's playing spectacular. He looks spectacular. Honestly, at this point, if he was entering the draft, I think that there would be an argument to take him over JSN.
Oh, I would agree 100%. It's definitely there. Just, it might be unfair to JSN because he hasn't played very much this year, but you can't really argue the production. And I think there's a chance it could play out kind of like the whole George Pickens thing, where George Pickens didn't play very much, so he goes as like the wide receiver 7 or 8 off the board, something like that. And right now he's looking like the best rookie receiver, not much debate. So I guess you could argue Garrett Wilson's playing well too overall, but nonetheless, George Pickens is still my wide receiver 1, and he's looking like one of the better rookie. What did I say, running back?
I don't know.
I feel like I said running back. Regardless, wide receiver. And I think it could be the same type of thing, where JSN is just getting overshadowed because he hasn't played a lot, and the shoes have kind of been filled elsewhere. But nonetheless, 2 extremely talented wide receivers who are going to do some damage in the NFL.
Absolutely. Chase, those are our Heisman favorites, but I think we should give a little shout out to Drake May, the redshirt freshman from North Carolina. This is a guy that I don't think people expected him to play this well coming into this year, but currently he sits 5th in yards at just under 2,700. He's tied for first when it comes to touchdowns, 29, and only 3 interceptions. He's got a 90.2 QBR, and he's the reason that the North Carolina Tar Heels are actually in business right now and ranked.
Yeah, I mean, he looks awesome, dude. He looks like a future NFL stud, and it's only just beginning for him. I'm so excited to watch him continue to develop because he has looked great, and he's doing great work for UNC.
There could be a possibility where that is the best quarterback class we've seen in a while. I mean, we've seen some great ones.
Mike,
yeah,
we need to stop saying this because it like we said for 2021, they're disappointing. We're saying, this upcoming 2023 class could have been it, maybe 6 quarterbacks the first round. Now we're down to maybe 2. We got to stop saying it.
I mean, we've seen some great quarterbacks, though. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, those 2 coming out together, they've looked fantastic. You look at Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and Tua, who has been playing a lot better this year. Those 3 have looked very good as well. We are hoping for a little bit more out of the 21 class. Justin Fields looks like probably the best quarterback in that draft class as of now. And
I don't know. They're all equally disappointing.
It's been tough. Trevor Lawrence has turned over the ball a lot.
I know. And I'm hoping this Calvin Ridley edition, which we can talk about later, is going to help him out down the road, but I can't help him this year.
Yeah, I like Calvin Ridley a lot. I don't know, though, if when you're looking at this 2023 class with Ewers, May, Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy, like, there's so many talented guys here, and I could argue that Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Quinn Ewers are all on the level of prospect that Trevor Lawrence was.
Yeah, they're definitely there. If one of them could enter this draft class, I would say that they would go first overall. I would say that's pretty safe to say. It really is going to be interesting to see how their years 3, however I'm supposed to say that, turn out. It's 3 guys that'll be taking the next big step in their development, can really step up and make it for a fun fight for the Heisman, and really could be quarterbacks 1, 2, and 3 again. It's very much possible.
Gosh, imagine if they get better. Oh, imagine if they get better. They're
already. You got to get better. You can't stay the same, because if you stay the same, you're not going to succeed in the NFL.
Well, yeah, but imagine they take a leap as big as they took this year. Take that next year. Oh my goodness, they would go 1, 2, and 3 overall. There'd be no
100%.
All right. Well, we are going to cut this episode. We're going to do 2 episodes. So make sure to stay tuned for our NFL episode that is going to be coming out right after this one. I want to thank you so much for coming out and giving us a listen on this one. If you want to stay up to date with all that we do and get those notifications when we do go down for a month, make sure to head over to our Twitter at WNP Sports Pod. That's, again, on Twitter at WNP Sports Pod. All of our other socials down in the link below. If you are listening on YouTube, if you could please give us a like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think about the college football landscape right now. Who's going to win, Georgia or Tennessee this weekend? I want to know down in the comments below. If you could hit the bell to turn on notifications, we'd really appreciate that. If you're listening on a podcast platform, if you could please give us a 5-star rating and a follow, we'd absolutely love you for it. Thanks so much for stopping by. And as always, we're not professionals.